Okay, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. And for many of you, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in again to a next webinar related to the implementation of the new veterinary regulation, in particular related to the pharmacovigilance guidelines. So today's webinar is entitled Veterinary Pharmacovigilance Inspections, Pharmacovigilance Systems, their Quality Management Systems, and Pharmacovigilance System Master Files, Introduction and Principles. My name is Joel Solas. I'm the head of veterinary risk and surveillance at EMA's Veterinary Medicines Division. So as you know, the new regulation leaves the main responsibility for post-marketing monitoring of a veterinary medicinal product with the marketing authorization holder, mostly still based on spontaneous adverse event reporting and the ability to continuously do signal management using the available data. In addition, and in order to allow further focusing on the important events, an overall risk-based approach is key, and that is proposed in the different guidelines. And that was the subject of the webinars of the last weeks. Also, the oversight from the regulators should apply risk-based principles, hence relying again and trusting the continuous monitoring of the marketing authorization holder. And that is one reason why this regulation has more prominent requirements regarding the quality management systems expected to be in place by the companies, and also the possibility to verify this work through pharmacovigilance inspections. And that brings us to the two sessions today, providing general principles on, for the first session, related to the module on controls and pharmacovigilance inspections. So we will cover the regulatory framework, the planning, the conduct, reporting, follow-up, and operation of pharmacovigilance inspections in the EU for the monitoring of marketing authorization holders' compliance with the pharmacovigilance obligations. And the second part will relate to the pharmacovigilance systems, the basic requirements on the pharmacovigilance system, its integral quality management system, and the pharmacovigilance system master file, the PSMF, that marketing authorization holders in the European Union should establish and maintain. At the end of each session, there is an allocated 20 minutes for your questions. We would ask you to please type your questions into the chat, and when prompted by the chair, any questions can also be raised after the presentations. We will respond to some of the questions already in the chat if we can, but most of them normally will wait for the Q&A sessions. If you have any additional questions following the webinar, please email us at vetchange.program@ema.europe.eu. We will put that in the chat as well, that email address. And I can see the chat has already started, so people have been prepared. That's very good with the first questions coming in. Please be reminded that today's webinar is being recorded for training purposes, and it will be made available on the EMA's corporate website in the coming weeks. So by continuing to be in this session, you are consenting to be recorded. Your personal data will be processed by EMA in accordance with regulation EU 2018/1725. In case you do not agree, we kindly ask you to leave the meeting now. So after this short introduction, I would like now to introduce our first speaker, Calogero Canavo. He's a pharmacist with a master in regulatory affairs. He has worked as an inspector, pharmacovigilance inspector in human inspections for the Italian Medicines Agency between 2013 and 2016. And then he joined the Medicines Agency, EMA, in May 2016 in the area of GCP, GLP, and pharmacovigilance inspection coordination. Calogero provides scientific support to the Secretariat of the Pharmacovigilance Inspectors Working Group. This working group focuses on harmonization and coordination of pharmacovigilance inspections and related activities at community level. They meet 4 times per year at the agency with representatives of the inspectorates related to human and veterinary medicinal products. So after this short introduction, Carlo, please, the floor is yours. Good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Jos, for the introduction. Good morning to everybody. So, okay, as Joe said, today, so we'll go to the regulatory framework that is related to the inspection and controls, and we will see what has changed on pharmacovigilance inspection compared to the previous legislation and together with the new legislation. And we'll try to highlight some topics that we think would be useful for you to know. Um, According to the guidance, Commission implementing regulation. And also, as Joe said, we'll have a question and answer session where we will try to address as much question as possible. But we may not be able to answer all the question now because more clarification discussion would be needed. And also we have some inspector members that have been involved in the drafting of the Commission implementing regulation and the guidance that we'll talk today. So maybe they can have, I can have their help, their support. So, and I'd like to thank them, all of the members that have been involved in the drafting of this guidance just now, because they put all the expertise in the job that we did. So, okay, we can go to the next slide, please. So, regulatory framework, next, please. Okay, as you know, the regulation 2019 6 is the main legislation that will come into force next year, 28th of January, and is the regulation on veterinary medicinal product and repealing the directive 2001/82. And according to the regulation, we have also the Commission implementing regulation that laying down the rules for the application of regulation as regard good pharmacovigilance practice on the format, content, and summary pharmacovigilance system master file for veterinary medicinal products. And let's say all the good pharmacovigilance practices that have been drafted. So, I would like to highlight now the main articles that are related to the inspection and controls on that are reported in the regulation. First, next slide, please. So, as you can see, we have some article 4, where we said already that controls the word controls means any task performed by competent authority for the verification of compliance with this regulation. And the other article that is very important for us is 123, where that include inspection as part of the controls. So inspection may be carried out as part of the controls. And 126, that is the specific rules on pharmacovigilance inspection. We'll try to go deeply in the next slide, please. Next slide. So the regulation article 126 gives the authority the power, let's say, to the competent authority and the agency to ensure that all pharmacovigilance system master file in union are regularly checked and the pharmacovigilance system are being correctly applied. So the role of the agency will be to coordinate the inspection, and competent authority shall carry out the inspection on the pharmacovigilance system of the products that are authorized in accordance with Article 44, that we mean the CAP, centralized procedure, but also the products that are authorized in accordance with Article 47, 49, 52, and 53, that are the rest of the national products, let's say. And important part of this article, let's say, comma 4, where the competent authority of the member states in which the pharmacovigilance system master file are located shall carry out the inspection of the pharmacovigilance system master file. We'll see later what this means. Here I want to highlight the main part for the Commission implementing regulation of 2001 1281 that gives the responsibility to the marketing authorization holder to retain the full responsibilities for all the pharmacovigilance obligations subcontract to third parties. So here in the Commission implementing regulation is so it's clear that the third party should be ready also for control or inspection by the national competent authority or the European Medicines Agency, but all the responsibility will retain always on the marketing authorization holder for all the pharmacovigilance obligations. This is something that we want to put clear in the Commission implementing regulation, and the same for, again, marketing authorization holder shall be ready for controls and shall be prepared for the inspection. Article 26 is the article regarding the Commission implementing regulation, again on the controls. And the controls here, we want to highlight that the controls, who should be ready for the controls, should be the qualified person responsible for pharmacovigilance in accordance with Article 77 of the regulation, their representative responsible for the reporting of adverse events, and any natural or legal person carry out pharmacovigilance activity in whole or in part on behalf of or in conjunction with marketing authorization holder. Again, here we want to emphasize with this article that all the persons that should be ready for controls. And the next article, 27, next slide, please. Here, again, the marketing authorization holder, this part we can, the second comma, we can see that the site where the pharmacovigilance system master file, so where the site where the inspection is conducted will be the sites where the pharmacovigilance system master file is located, or any other sites of the person, those person inspected in accordance with paragraph 1. So the person that I mentioned below. So all the sites where the PCMF is located or the person are located could be inspected. And it's also very important that regarding the third party carrying out pharmacovigilance inspection that of course could be inspected as well, these sites could be located within or outside the union. And so in this way, there is a possibility to inspect outside the union. Again, Article 27 of the Commission implementing regulation. So here, what I want to emphasize in this is that in the occasion of the inspection, market authorization holder shall present the proof that they have personnel, system, facilities in place to meet the pharmacovigilance obligation, and again, they are ready for inspection. Present proof in regard to the contractual agreement that should be clear regarding the roles and the responsibilities, to whom the pharmacovigilance activities are subcontracted, and provision for their inspection and audit. This is very important because this is something that inspector raise always, because the contracts are not clear regarding their roles and the responsibilities, and the exchange of safety data information, and also there should be provision for the inspection and audit, because all these subcontractors should be audited and inspected. And also again, this marketing authorization holder shall demonstrate that the pharmacovigilance system is in compliance with the legislation and the relevant pharmacovigilance guidance. So, okay, sorry. So this was just to highlight the main article that we have in the main legislation, let's say, and just to highlight this article. But now, what has changed really compared to the previous legislation, the volume 9B, what is important for us, for you, for all of that, because before the inspection were performed where the QPPV was located. I mean, still the inspection is still conducted, but from next year, after 28th of January, the inspection will be conducted where the pharmacovigilance system master file are located. So the competent authority, the Article 126 reads that the competent authority of the member states in which a pharmacovigilance system master file are located shall carry out inspection of the pharmacovigilance system master file. And we'll see in the next session on the pharmacovigilance system master file that where the pharmacovigilance system master file shall be located, because this could be located either where the QPV is located or where the main pharmacovigilance activities are performed. So this is very important because now we have a new definition. If you go to the next slide, we can see we have a new role. I mean, we have the supervisory authority that is the member states where the PSMF is located, that is the member state that lead the inspection. So with this new role, all the member states that have the PSMF are the supervisory authority for that marketing authorization holder. Other important thing is the delegation and work sharing. This we will see because the regulation gives the possibility to delegate task and work sharing also. And also one important thing is the possibility that the inspection outcome are captured in the database. I will not don't want to talk about the left right side of the slide because my colleague will talk about that, Sofia Milona. And then now, next slide, please. I already said about the supervisory authority, that is the member state where the PSMF is located and is responsible for verifying on behalf of the union that the marketing authorization holder for the medicinal product and or any third party carrying out pharmacovigilance activities satisfy the pharmacovigilance requirement laying down in the regulation and commission implementing the regulation. So here what I want to highlight is the difference between a supervisory authority inspection and national non-supervisory authority inspection, because supervisory authority inspection are usually system inspection and may cover also national specific aspect if request. But with this doesn't mean that national non-supervisory authority inspection cannot happen. This may still be required to verify compliance and or product specific issue with the national and the requirement, or also to follow up inspection findings upon the request from the supervisory authority or another member state. So this is something that I want to make clear because this national non-supervisory authority may still be required. Okay, so another important thing is regarding the Article 80, where is stated about the delegation of task and work sharing, because this article includes a provision for a competent authority to delegate any of the task to a competent authority in another member state. But this, of course, is subject to the written agreement. So the delegation, the commission about this delegation should be informed the commission, the agency, and the other competent authority, of course, and the member states may enter into work sharing initiative a delegation of responsibilities with any other competent authority in order to avoid the duplication of efforts. For instance, one important thing is the delegation of the supervisory authority responsibilities in order to delegate. So one supervisory authority could delegate the responsibility of their role to other member states to carry out the pharmacovigilance inspection. So in this way, we try to have this kind of let's say delegation of task with all the between all the member states. And again, the sharing of information is very important, is a key for cooperation and coordination of inspection at union level, because what should be shared is for sure the planned and conduct inspection, the inspection scope, the inspection outcome of each inspection. So in order to the agency and member states shall cooperate in order to increase the exchange of information on the inspection, to avoid the duplication of efforts. It could be also, of course, inspection, and also in order to facilitate the risk-based inspection program. So according to this, we try to have let's say less effort should be come from this cooperation. I mean, we already did. We were used to share all this information, but now this with the regulation, the regulation makes this stronger. And an important Article 74 of the regulation says that the result of pharmacovigilance inspection shall be recorded in the pharmacovigilance database. But these results are accessible only to the national competent authority, because the marketing authorization holder will continue to receive the full inspection report directly from the national competent authority. So, so in this slide, I hope to see the inspection report in the middle that could go in both ways in the pharmacovigilance database, but is still for the result, I mean, of inspection accessible only to the national competent authority in order to plan the inspection, the next inspection, in order to exchange all the information that are useful and are captured in the database, but the company will still receive the full inspection report directly from the national competent authority. So I'm sorry for this picture. I mean, this is not Chernobyl, but it's a company picture. Okay. And here, what we can see from this slide, okay, again, regulation, commission implementing regulation, and the guidelines that have been developed, have been published recently. And here you have all the links connected to each regulation. So this guidance, now I want to, next slide please. I would like to highlight some points that I think are useful for you to know regarding, for instance, the CAP inspection program, because risk-based program. So I want to highlight the difference between CAP inspection program and national inspection program. So the CAP inspection program is the program that is a risk-based program for routine inspection of marketing authorization holder with centralized product, and this is determined by the European Medicines Agency together with the supervisory authority, pharmacovigilance inspector working group, and the CVMP as pharmacovigilance working party. So this is something that is still we are used to do, and we will continue to do. And of course, this kind of inspection might be specifically requested by CVMP in a specific case, if there are third country or joint inspection, or could be requested by CVMP if the member states want to do like a CVMP inspection, if there are specific issue, or there are different cases for that require a CVMP requested. National inspection program is something that is due to be done by each national competent authority for pharmacovigilance system master file of marketing authorization holder of non-centralized authorized product, for instance, national authorized product. And this is the responsibility of the competent authority of the member states, where the PSMF is located, to ensure by means of inspection that the legal requirements governing medicinal products are complied with. So these are again a supervisory authority, but of non-centralized authorized product, for PSMF or marketing authorization of non-centralized product. But in this national inspection program could be also part of the inspection that I mentioned before of the CAP inspection program, because CAP inspection program should be also implemented through national inspection program. Also, we have the non-supervisory authority national inspection that also may be requested, as I mentioned before, to follow up some supervisory inspection issue or to check a national requirement. This non-supervisory authority national inspection may still be required. And the last point is just to highlight the member states are responsible for the planning and coordination of the inspection within their own territory in order to ensure compliance with the legislation and to verify the effectiveness of the pharmacovigilance system at the national and EU level. In these slides, I would like just to recap what I said so far. So we have supervised authority inspection that are inspection of CAPS, so PSMF or marketing authorization with CAPS. Supervised authority inspection that are inspection of PSMF of marketing authorization with only NAPS. Then we have the non-supervisory authority inspection that are the one that I mentioned before. And all of these inspection could be routine inspection because a routine inspection program, according a routine inspection program is used to perform this kind of plan this kind of inspection. But also we could have a targeted inspection. This target inspection could be also supervised authority inspection, but it could be also just a lone inspection that could be the case that some inspection that are part of the CAP inspection program of the national inspection program could be anticipated because there are triggers, because there are specific issues that need to be investigated, and this could be performed in advance of the plan of the planned date. All of these inspections are part of the member states national inspection program that we say the 30 member states, including all the European Economic Area member states. And this is the European Pharmacovigilance Inspection Program. So we call this, but it's included, all of these programs are included in the European Pharmacovigilance Inspection Program. I hope this is clear. Next slide, please. And I mentioned the risk-based program because this is I mean, also the agency, the National Competent Authority, when they plan their inspection, the risk factor which may be taken into consideration by competent authority when establish a risk pharmacovigilance inspection program. And these risk factors could be product related factors that for instance, product with additional pharmacovigilance risk management measures, product with large sales volume, product with potential higher risk. So these are some example of the product factors that could be taken into account, but also could be taken into account marketing authorization holder factors. For instance, marketing authorization holder that has never been inspected, or marketing authorization holder with many products in the market, or marketing authorization holder that don't have many resources available to perform a pharmacovigilance task, let's say, or again change in the organization of the marketing authorization. For instance, if there have been mergers or acquisition. Also, marketing authorization holder that with the subcontract the pharmacovigilance activities could be a factor to be considered, and or especially if there have been change in the contract arrangement with the service provider, if there have been also change of QPV, of let's say frequently change or change to the pharmacovigilance database, or also compliance history, that this could include inspection outcome from other national competent authority, or also from other inspection, type of inspection. It could be GCP, could be GMP. So these could be factor to be taken into account when the program is prepared, let's say. And then we have the next slide, because as I mentioned already, no, here, yes, this is the routine. I mean, what is the scope of the routine pharmacovigilance inspection? This is something, is not something new, it's something that is always there. Just I want to highlight again what should be checked during the inspection. Here I highlight the main item, let's say, that we used to put in the scope: collection, reporting, and recording of suspected adverse events for a veterinary medicinal product. And this, of course, includes the collection, the receiving, the exchange of suspected adverse events from all type of source, sites, and department. And again, the data transfer, data management, data coding, suspect adverse events report validation and evaluation. So this is part of the collection, reporting, recording. Also, what should be inspected normally in the routine inspection is the continuous benefit risk balance monitoring. Of course, the use of all the source of information for the signal detection. The risk management system, including a process for monitoring the benefit risk balance of products and performing signal management. And again, the last point is the pharmacovigilance system. The full pharmacovigilance system should be inspected with the roles and responsibility of the marketing authorization holder, the QPV, quality management system, the computer system, contracts, agreements, and sorry, there is a repetition here. So all the parts of the pharmacovigilance system are investigated during the inspection. And because here we have the routine pharmacovigilance inspection, we have also the target pharmacovigilance inspection. That this target inspection may arise when we have one or more triggers. The triggers that I would like here to highlight are triggers that could be the change in the risk-benefit balance of the products, or delays or failure to identify or communicate a risk. Could be also non-compliance or product safety issue, or again delays or missing reporting. Reporting, we mean also not only adverse events, but also to the signal, related to the signals. As you know, they require 30 days notification, or if there are emergency safety issue that require urgent regulatory action, it should be reported no later than 3 working days. And then also, if there are incomplete reports, or the quality of the reports is very poor, or they've been requested by the competent authority and the provision of the data was inadequate, and also if there are concerns about the status of fulfillment of commitments, and again delays or failure to carry out a specific obligation relating to the monitoring of product safety, delays in the implementation, or also inappropriate implementation of CAPA, because maybe the inspection has been performed and but the implementation of the CAPA has not been appropriate, and then this could trigger again re-inspection, or non-compliance or product safety issue from other type of inspection. These, as I mentioned before, other GMP inspection, for instance, or other kind of inspection. And again, one here is also the frequent change in the location of the PSMF. This is something that could, of course, could trigger inspection, because if there is no motivation, so of course this could alert why the PSMF is changing very frequently. So this could be something just that we think, okay, we do avoid the inspection, and then of course this alert the inspectors and us. Pharmacovigilance, here we have just a distinction between a pharmacovigilance system and product-specific inspection, because pharmacovigilance system inspection are the inspection to review the procedure, the system, the personnel, facility in place, and determine their compliance with the regulatory pharmacovigilance obligation. Of course, as part of pharmacovigilance inspection, product-specific sample may be used, but the difference between the product-related pharmacovigilance inspection is that the product-related pharmacovigilance inspection are focused on product-related pharmacovigilance issue that could be raised by assessor or by analysis of data or whatever. These including product-specific activities and documentation. And again, this kind of inspection, product-related pharmacovigilance inspection, the general pharmacovigilance system may still be examined as part of a product-related inspection. So the two kinds of inspection are complementary, but the one doesn't exclude the other. Okay, here what I would like to highlight is just that when a non-compliance with the pharmacovigilance inspection is identified during an inspection, follow-up should be required until corrective and preventive action is completed. So here we just put some inspection follow-up activities that could be performed, could be considered to be performed by the competent authority. Of course, the first one is the review of the corrective and preventive action. The second one is the review of the periodic progress reports that are submitted by the marketing authorization holder. Or again, an inspection could be considered, as I mentioned before, in case it's considered necessary to assess the kappa because they are not being implemented in a good way. Or again, submission of previously unsubmitted data variation impact analysis, or request for issuing safety communication, or the same could be the same inspection finding could be communicated to other regulatory authority in EU and outside EU. And product related action, this could be another action that could be taken as a follow-up. This I will say in the next slide, because this also related to the potential regulatory action that we that could be taken into account by the competent authority, and of course sanction. So we, for instance, the first one is the education and facilitation. I mean, this is when the competent authority may communicate with the marketing representative about the finding, about the issue. There could be, like, for instance, a meeting to summarize all the, to talk about all the findings, to clarify the legal requirement and expectation of the regulator. And or again, the provision of information to other competent authority, agency, third country regulator. This is another potential action that could be taken into account. Or again, inspection and reinspection. Warning letter is non-compliance statement, or infringement notice. These are these are in accordance, let's say, with the national legislation, should be in accordance with the national legislation, or again, action against a marketing authorization holder, or a marketing authorization. These could be different action that are like urgent, safety restriction, I mean, variation of the marketing authorization, suspension or revocation, or delay in approvals of the new marketing authorization application, because of course, if we know already that the pharmacovigilance system is not compliant, the company doesn't have a pharmacovigilance system, a robust pharmacovigilance system, or we alert the assessor that are assessing a new marketing authorization holder, and this, of course, could lead the delays in the approval of the marketing authorization holder until the corrective and the preventive action have been implemented, and also product recalls. Then action relating also to the advertising of information. I mean, it could be different action. And the last, I mean, I hope this will not be the case, but also this could be another action, the financial penalties. Again, this also according to the national requirement. This could be another potential action. And I think with this slide, I conclude just the main point, let's say, of this guidance. But of course, I didn't mention about the announced and unannounced inspection. These are kind of inspection that could be considered. They could be the unannounced inspection could be also be part of the inspection that I mentioned, because usually are announced, but will be also non-announced. I mean, unannounced. So these, I mean, I don't need to explain more.
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. We have now 20 minutes, a good 20 minutes to answer your questions. We will start first with the ones that were in the chat, and I will read them out to you. And please, for you, Carlo or Sophia, to answer them. So the first one, Raquel Martinez, third parties includes agreements with local representatives or only out services tasks with external companies. So this is about third parties, whether it includes agreements with local representatives or only out service tasks with external companies. I don't know if the question is clear to you. Hello,
Hello,
Sophia.
Joss.
Yes.
May I propose maybe one of the inspectors could address this, because they do come across these cases more often in inspections. Otherwise, we can also take it. But maybe Peter or Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sophia, and thank you for the question as well. So if I understand correctly, the question here is asking what third parties could encompass and how that could affect which site will be inspected. And third parties would be any external party that would help to fulfill PV activities on behalf of the MAH. So for the purposes of a local representative, for example, they may be involved in the collection of adverse events, perhaps follow-up of adverse events with the reporters. They may also help to facilitate inspection activities. So they are part of one of your service providers. As a result, they could be selected as a site for inspection. In particular, you may have a situation where on a national inspection, maybe the global PV activities take place elsewhere. However, there's a local representative in the country of the authority which is conducting that inspection, and the local representative then may have a role in helping to facilitate that inspection. Perhaps they may provide office space, perhaps they may provide the link with the main PV activities there. So, short answer, yes, third parties would include local representatives for the purposes of inspection. I hope that is clear.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank
So
you.
that was Peter, who's inspector at the Irish Inspectorate. Anybody else wants to add something to that or an additional question on related to the third parties? You can raise your hands if. Well, I think Katarina, you have a better view, so please let me know if there's any hand raised from the participants.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Thank you. Then I'll move to the next question from Carmen. Who will record the inspection report in the pharmacovigilance database, the NCA or the MAH?
These are
Hold on.
yes. Okay, I mean this can reply because this will depend on the kind of inspection. I mean, it could be if it's national or it's CFMP request because the understanding is member states will enter the outcome of the national inspection and EMA will enter the outcome of inspection coordinated centrally. So I mean for CAP, for centralized products. But of course, this is still to be confirmed because the database is not live yet, so it's under developing. And but this should be the scenario.
But in any case, Carlo, it's never going to be the MAH, right? The question was, would it be the NCA or the MAH? No, it's
no, the NCA. The
yeah.
NCA will record.
Very good. Thank you very much. Difficult question from Marianne van Hoofd. How frequently should SA inspections of PSMFs be done? Maybe one of our inspectors has also a view on this.
Yeah, hello, here's Andrea. So this is there's no frequency given on a legal base, and this is to give more flexibility. I think in the beginning or at the beginning of this new legislation, it might happen more frequent to get a view on which pharmacovigilance systems are implemented at the marketing authorization holders, because also the inspectorates have to plan the inspections on a risk-based approach and to get the information of the pharmacovigilance systems at the different marketing authorization holders on marketing authorizations. We need to have a view on the to get a look into the PSMF. But yeah, I said at the beginning, I would say we will start. There's no time given, but we will not start right from the 28th of January on to ask for the PSMFs. So I hope this will answer your question, Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for that answer. Yeah, Marianne. Thanks, Andrea, as well. Thank you, Marianne. I'm going to move to the next question from Daniela Golinelli. What do you mean as MAHs with low resources for pharmacovigilance as risk factor? Question mark. Do you mean SME companies or pharmacovigilance resources are measured in comparison if sales turnover and or number of products? Question mark. So I can repeat the question. What do you mean as MAHs with low resources for pharmacovigilance as risk factor? Do you mean SME companies or pharmacovigilance resources are measured in comparison with sales turnover or number of products? So it's maybe some indication or interpretation on what would be regarded as low resources and how would that be calculated or counted or interpreted. Again, I think for any of the regulators on this call or in the panel, please go ahead. Carlo.
I think maybe Peter has experience also with this. If you want.
Thank you, Carlo, and thank you for the very interesting question. What we mean by low resource or perhaps lack of sufficient resource to fulfill PV obligations, and that does not necessarily relate to SMEs. It could be any size of company who does not have enough resource to fulfill their pharmacovigilance obligations, or certainly that resource is strained and it results in non-compliance. How we would typically identify that: first off, we would look at inspection history, we would look at inspections from other authorities, and that can certainly give us intel to know companies or MAHs where there are issues with resources. Furthermore, we'd also have intel internally and externally, for example, quality issues, perhaps when it comes to receiving adverse events, late reports, poor quality, poor follow-up, and that could be something which could be shared from assessor level. So we would be aware that there could be resource issues contributing to that. And then finally, during inspection preparation and reviewing the PSMF, and indeed we may have standalone requests looking for organograms of your organization, and in particular highlighting staff members involved in PV. And relative to the size of your company, to the number of products, perhaps the number of adverse events, it can be very telling from that if there's enough resource in place to fulfill obligations. So there's a number of different factors which feed into it, but bottom line really is, if there's a lack of sufficient resource, if that's leading to compliance issues, that's what we mean with resourcing issues, which could then feed in to risk-based inspection planning and ultimately your entity being selected for inspection. Thank you.
Thank you again, Peter. It's a very good response. Any further questions on this topic? Nobody raising their hand for the moment. And I'm going to, for the moment, this is the last one that came in on the chat from Laure Cardi. For non-caps, pharmacovigilance inspection will be conducted at the PSMF location place. This seems to be a big change compared to the current situation where national pharmacovigilance inspections are conducted at the site of the local representative of the MAH. Do I understand this correctly? So this is about the apparent change in the location of inspections related to national pharmacovigilance inspections, which is to be conducted at the PSMF location place, or is that not interpreted correctly? Carlo, how was your? Can you
Yes,
clarify?
I mean, again, is the PSMF location to determine the supervisory authority. And again, the PSMF could be located either where the QPV is located or the main pharmacovigilance activities are performed. Of course, this doesn't mean that the national inspection cannot be, may still be required, for instance, where to inspect other location that could be more appropriate, where there is, for instance, for the local representative of the marketing authorization holder. But again, for non-caps with the PSMF, where for non-supervisor, let's say, for supervisory authority of non-caps, still is to determine the site to be inspected is the PSMF location. But the local representative could be the local site, other local site could be still inspected. But the PSMF location is the meaningful of the inspection with the new legislation. I don't know if
I hope this is clear. Laure, if it's okay. So that was the last question that I have. We have on the list coming out of the chat. Maybe somebody else is raising a hand.
Someone raised, but they lowered their hand. So if you want, you can move on.
Thank you, Laure. Confirming. So there we still have time left for any questions related to this first part of the webinar on pharmacovigilance inspections. You can come.
We have a raised hand, Jos.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm gonna mute you, and then you can ask. Okay, the person gave up. I think you are very intimidating, Jos. Okay, Anton, I'm gonna unmute you, and then you can ask your question. Just give me a minute.
I put, Jos, there is another question, just
Yes, I can see the question. Maybe we can take.
No, at the end of the slide.
Hello, Joss.
Sorry, yes.
I'm sorry, it's Cornelio Anton Zoetis. So going back to the last question and the response, it's still not clear. I'm sorry for that, but it's really related. It's in relation with what Lord just questioned with regard to national inspection and the location of the PSMF, because it's really very different of how national inspections are conducted now. So for example, if the PSMF documentation it's located in Belgium only, are you expecting that any other national authorities will inspect also this site?
You mean the site in Belgium?
Yes.
The site in Belgium will be inspected by the supervisory authority.
That's clear. But what, for example, if we have, let's say, the German authorities or the French authorities, will they? Because I think this is related to what Laura has questioned, how they will perform the inspection. They will perform the inspection of the Belgian site or the local representative in Germany.
I mean, France that need to inspect the.
Yes, if the PSMF, my understanding includes also, for example, nationally authorized products. So let's say the PSMF that is situated in Belgium for Zoetis is including actually products that are on the market in Germany. So if Germany would like to inspect, where should Germany inspect in relation to the German products if the German products are actually covered by the PSMF, which is in Belgium?
That's correct, Jos. Thank you.
No.
Okay, this German could still inspect their affiliate. I mean, the German country, non where the PSMF is located, because yes, the PSMF is located in Belgium, but still Germany could inspect Germany, the place where the activity are performed for the national products. Is my understanding correct? Don't know, Peter, if you want.
Thanks. That's correct, Carlo. And as to add, perhaps from national examples we would have, and in particular on the human area where the PSMF would have been in place for the last 9 years or so, how it would typically work is at national level, if a PSMF is in another location, really you need to make the call as an NCA, as a competent authority, where you want to inspect. In many instances, that could be at that office where the local representative is based. However, in some instances, it could make more sense to travel to the location of the PSMF. For example, if the vast majority of staff conducting PV activities are based at the location of the PSMF, which may even be in a different country, we would discuss this with the MAH and we would say, right, what's the best location? Do you want us to stay at the location of your local contact person, which is based in our country in Ireland, or do you want us to travel to the PSMF location? It may make more sense for everyone involved if we would travel there because you have all your staff available. But really, that will depend on the member states. Some may stick to their local personnel in their local territories and ask you to make sure the staff can facilitate that inspection, even if they're coming from another location. Others may decide to go to that PSMF location, but it will depend on the case by case basis. So I suppose in summary, if the PSMF is based in another country, if an inspection is called by the national authority, they could either still conduct that inspection at the location of the local representative, or particularly with agreement of the MAH, they could travel to that PSMF location where it makes more sense for them to do so. So it would depend on the structure of the organization on a case by case basis. That's certainly how we would approach it at a national level in Ireland. Thank you.
And perhaps additionally, we could say that if it is possible to have inspections with different countries, this can be coordinated. Perhaps it will be a good thing to have if it's only pure routine inspection, to have the inspection where the PSMF is by the supervisory authority, and additionally or at the same time part of the inspection might be at the affiliate in another country. So inspectors can go together, and it depends always on a case-by-case thing, like Peter already said, and we will see how this will work.
A related question to, thank you very much, Peter and Andrea, to clarifying this, but a related question from Roger is that will inspection schedules be coordinated for MEHs with different types of registration, CAPS, MRP, national authorized products, between different supervisory authorities, and how will this be done? So what is the current thinking on practically this is going to be coordinated in the EU between national authorities, and because when we're covering essentially the same PSMF. So is there can somebody clarify maybe on that question? How practically it is foreseen that the coordination will occur between the national authorities? Is that through the inspections working party in practice, Carlo? You have.
Yes, the coordination will go between the inspectors through the pharmacovigilance inspector working group. Yes, to see between supervisory authority and other member states in order to see if they can go together, or as Andre Peter said, is on case by case. So this will be assessed case by case.
So from my understanding, also practically in the inspectors working party, you have at each meeting you have an overview of the or the yearly inspections that are foreseen, and then you try to organize it and coordinate it. Is that correct? Including caps, non-caps, MRP products, or how does it work?
We have the program for caps that could, of course, this could include other products, but what we coordinate are cap inspections, and according to this, then whenever some coordination is needed between member states, this will be discussing during all the inspector working group or with the member states, related member states that are needed for this coordination.
Okay, thank you very much.
Private call, I mean.
Thank you. We had two more raised hands. I can see, well, I was told one from Declan. The floor is yours, Declan, first. We don't hear you yet, Declan. I can see your, yes.
Sorry, can you hear me now, Joss?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is just a follow-up, and thank you, Peter, and the others for your explanation, but maybe you can comment from the human side, Peter. My concern is that in all the explanations, a bit like you've alluded to, Joss, that whilst it seems to be that's the way it could work, it seems to be also a member state could decide to do an inspection if they wished, because you seem to be saying that within the guidance they can do that. So I suppose the concern for me, I think that's where the questions are coming from, is this regulation was supposed to reduce the number of national inspections we were going to have. And I'm still concerned within the answers that there's still an out for the member states to do it if they wish.
Thank you, Declan, for that question. So maybe what is the experience on the human side, Peter, or how do you see this going forward on the veterinary side? Is there an agreement between member states to coordinate more, or?
I think Sophia has her hand up. I may leave Sophia answer first, and then if she
Sophia.
wants me to supplement, I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please, Peter, supplement as well. That would be very helpful. But what I wanted to say, that's a good remark. We will start with the PSMF locations and the supervisory authority. But sometimes this can be very complicated, especially for systems that cover many products, caps and naps. You cannot exclude that you will have national inspections. Calogero also explained that we have the cap program for MAAs with at least one CAP, but then this program is incorporated to each member state national program. So this means that each member state will have to do a risk-based analysis on which MAAs they have to inspect. And there, of course, they will prioritize, and they have to prioritize the PSMF locations because they are the supervisory authority for those unless they have delegated the responsibility. But there may be some reasons, there may be good reasons to inspect also the local representatives. Now, what we will try to do, and we will also try to do this more efficiently than from the human side, is to enhance the cooperation between the member states. So they can have joint inspections, they can really share and delegate some tasks or some verifications, but you cannot exclude, and I think that's what Peter was explaining, that you may have a national inspection as well in the local representative, and this may be the best way forward. But this doesn't mean a full inspection. I would like to hope that once we are more into this system, that you may have an inspection that with maybe a reduced scope or maybe more focused on the activities of the local representative. If there is a concern or there is a reason to look in the PSMF and the whole system, I think Peter explained that this will need to happen in one way or another. So it is on a case by case, but our first aim would be to see how all these programs will come together to make this more efficient, as you said, because otherwise there will not be any improvement. But we need to see how this work, and of course the first aim is to really verify compliance and cover all the products on the market. So we cannot exclude having some national inspections. I don't know, maybe Peter correct me, but this is also to be discussed with the whole inspectors working group.
Yes, Sophia, that's all correct. But the concept of a supervisory authority conducting an inspection, where the PSMF is located, will determine who the supervisory authority is. They will then conduct that inspection, and ultimately, what you would find then is at least one member state would have conducted an inspection, and that would help ease the burden. And ultimately, other member states could rely on that inspection, although there could be instances where national inspections would still be required, for example, particular parts of that system relating to their countries, or indeed if there are particular concerns identified. So, I mean, it still needs to be discussed, as Sophia said, but I would say such a system in place overall would help to ease burden, and certainly that would be the experience in the human side. Having this system in place has reduced the number of duplicate inspections by multiple member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much for clarifying this, Peter and Sophia. I think we're overstepping a little bit, but I think there was one hand left, isn't it? I know, no more raised hands. Good timing then to go for a break. We have a break about 15 minutes. I propose to come back with the second part of today's session at 25 past 11, please. 25 past 11. Thank you. I hope you all had a good break sitting back in front of the screens. We've got so used to this. And so we're going for the second part of our webinar today on the topic of pharmacovigilance system master files. And I'm happy to introduce now Sofia Milona, my colleague at the agency. She's also a veterinary surgeon with specialization in public health. Sophia worked in the UK since 2001 and in 2004 joined the pharmaceutical industry in the field of clinical research and development and later in regulatory affairs. Then Sophia joined the agency in 2007 in the area of GCP, GLP and pharmacovigilance inspections coordination. She has previously been involved in the implementation of new pieces of legislation like the human pharmacovigilance legislation in 2012 and the implementation of safety reporting aspects in the human clinical trials regulation So, Sophia, the floor is yours. Look.
Hello, hello again to everyone, and thank you, Josh, for the introduction. And let's get started. Yes, so in this presentation, as usual, I will go through the regulatory framework, and then we will go through to discuss the main aspects in relation to the pharmacovigilance systems and quality management system for this topic. And then at the end, we will go through the requirements for the pharmacovigilance system master file. And please, as before, type your questions in the chat so we can take them during the Q&A session. So let's go to the next one. This you can pass. I'm sure you're all familiar with these abbreviations. We just included just in case. The next one. So this you are also familiar. The two new pieces of legislation that are very important. And in the next two slides, if you go to the next one, I just highlighted for ease of reference the sections and articles that are more relevant to the topic we are discussing, and we will go through those requirements during the presentation. So if you go to the next one, I would like to highlight that in this case, for the quality management systems, the pharmacovigilance system and the PSMF, the pharmacovigilance system master file, it is very important you become familiar with the Commission implementing regulation. We have also tried to put the important references in the guidance in the VGVP. So we hope you find this also helpful. Because one of the main changes we have is not that these elements are completely new to you, and if you already have a system in place, probably you have these elements in your system. What is maybe changing is that some of those that were in the guidance before, they are mentioned now in the legislation. So there is legal basis behind. So I would, for this reason, I would recommend you do become familiar with these legal references. So should we go to the next one then? This slide I just put here to highlight, and I'm sure you already know, we went from a directive to a regulation. And what this gives a big advantage, because up to now we had the directive requirements transposed to the national legislation of each member state. And this many times, maybe not always, resulted to different requirements per member state. Now, what we need to work on with this regulation that applies from the 28th of January 2022 is that we harmonize, and hopefully this will also bring a simplification. So we hope that we will start having harmonized requirements between the member states, and we will also aim to have requirements fit for purpose and not necessarily human medicines driven. So what we want to see is that we learn and we follow what was done for human medicines, but we can also do differently when this is needed. If you go to the next one. So let's go then to discuss about the pharmacovigilance system. And as I said, probably you all know the purpose of the pharmacovigilance system. And in this slide, I just want to make an introduction and to remind everyone the first thing that the Commission implementing regulation says is that the system, the market authorization holder pharmacovigilance system, should be fully functional. And this is very important, and we can discuss also later even if not everything is ready on the 28th of January 2022, you should always aim for a fully functional system. Now, the other thing you can see here is the elements of the system. You are familiar with the QPV. We really need sufficient and trained personnel. Uh, Everyone involved should have clear roles and responsibilities and should be trained for their tasks. And this, of course, applies to third parties when you are delegating activities to third parties. You have the quality management system. You really need to monitor and control how effective is this and the system. There should be corrective and preventive actions and change management when there is need. And you also have the risk management system. And when we say here risk management system, we mean all the structures and processes you have in place to facilitate signal management, continuous benefit risk monitoring to ensure that we have safe use of the veterinary medicinal products. And of course, there are requirements there for backups and also for business continuity. And all these elements have to be described in the pharmacovigilance system and documented actually. So there should be proof you are working in that way in the pharmacovigilance system master file. If you go to the next slide, we have some key elements that are also in the legislation for the qualified person for pharmacovigilance. And of course, this is not a new person in the legislation. We do have a requirement that they have either completed a veterinary surgeon training, or if they have not, because it's fine if they are not a veterinary surgeon, but in this case, they should be assisted by one on a continuous basis. And the other requirement that we discussed a bit earlier is the local or regional representative. And it's important that there is a local or regional representative, and this is for the purpose of someone to communicating in the language of the member state for the purpose of reporting. And there is flexibility on that, how um, you will follow this requirement. And of course, the QPV may also act as the local representative. There is a new requirement also to have a procedure in place to identify and deal with any conflicts of interest of the QPPV. If you go to the next slide. Yes, this is really coming from the Commission implementing regulation, where we are talking about the quality management system, is asking first to introduce this cycle we have here. So you should first ensure you plan. You have to establish the structures and write your procedures. And then you should really try and work according to those. So it's the quality adherence as it's called. And then you should also monitor what is happening. And if there is a need, you should implement improvements. So this cycle is continuous, and it should be taken into account for planning and preparing your quality management system for pharmacovigilance activities. If you go to the next one, you can see again here, and this is again not new, the elements of the quality management system. And I'm not going to read the definition, this you can find in the legislation, but you really need to think that the quality management system in place will provide effectiveness and efficiency of the system on a continuous basis. And the key elements are, you can see here. What I wanted to and we will discuss later, what I want to highlight is that if there are third parties that are delegated pharmacovigilance tasks, you should take them into account when you plan the quality management system, and they should be part of it. They should have their own, you have to really take into account, and they should be also audited on behalf of the MAH, from the MAH to have on the activities delegated, and they should also need to be inspected on behalf of the MAH. So if you go to the next one, so here I think we just need this to highlight some of the elements in the quality management system. So of course you should have an initial and continuous training, and each one should be trained for their role and responsibilities. This is not new, but you have to always remember that there are some departments or parts of the company that they may need to have specific training for and take a small part in the pharmacovigilance system, and they should also be trained and included in this training management system. So it is important that you plan this and you look holistically, and that's why I think also is you are asked to have a training management system. It shouldn't be complicated, but it should be looking what is needed to maintain and develop the competencies and ensure everyone is trained for their role. And these training plans and records to prove that this was done, they should be in the pharmacovigilance system master file. We will look on this later on. If you go to the next slide, please. Yes, the written procedure. This is also not new. You had a list of activities to be covered by written procedures already in volume 9b, and this doesn't change here. This is a list, of course, on the titles and how you group them is up to you, and you have flexibility on that. This is following the Commission implementing regulation, and similar list is given as an example in the guidance, but you can change the titles or how you organize this according to your organization. In green, you can see activities that have to be covered and relate to the receiving and recording, reporting adverse events. In red, you can see activities in relation to the risk management system. And as I said, with this, we mean processes for signal management, the processes for continuous monitoring of the benefit risk balance of the products, and the communication plan. And of course, you will need to have processes for the document management system, training, and audit. Next one. As I said, the document management system is very important. You have to have a way to archive documents. They have to be easily accessible. It is recommended to have a version control. Of course, this is as appropriate and as needed depending on the type of document. And I also know there is a requirement for documents and data that relate to individual veterinary medicinal products. You have to keep the records as long as the product is authorized and for 5 years after the marketing authorization ceases to be valid. And you will see also that in the document management system, we include the record management system, which relates to the adverse events management and handling. If you go to the next slide. Now, another item that you may have been using already is the performance indicators. For this, there is the definition. And really, the choice is yours. So you have to use performance indicators, and this will be information that you collect at regular intervals to monitor the performance of the system. And you have to choose this and explain, give the rationale, the reason for why you chose the performance indicators you have chosen. But I would like to say here that you really need to think on the key processes. What is important for you to monitor and get right? There is always this risk-based approach. So you should use this for the performance indicators. You should select indicators that are realistic and also measurable. And you should really describe, have the list of those, how they will be measured, how often, and why they were chosen, as I said, in the pharmacovigilance system master file. If you go to the next one, I have not given really exact examples how you will work with those. But as I said, you have to think of the key pharmacovigilance activities. So usually we have as performance indicators the timelines for reporting of adverse events, the quality of reports to be free of errors, aspects from the signal detection processes, again, the timing. Uh, the timing is very important. And then also timeliness for submission of pharmacovigilance or other safety variation applications. This is also very important. Updates of the product information when you have safety information to include. Um, and then you also need to think any other commitments or obligations you may have. And then in this case, you may consider also having performance indicators for those. In next one. Now, audit. So this is again a tool for you to verify how you are doing and drive continuous improvement. And they should be risk-based audit planning. And you should make a plan. And this is, as I said before, including also third parties. And the rationale for this plan and suggestion for audits should be documented. And you should cover all the pharmacovigilance activities. And the other important point is that you should consider that the individuals that conduct the audits, they have no direct involvement in the or responsibility in the activities they audit. So we shouldn't audit ourselves. Um, of course, you don't forget the third parties. If there are third parties contracted, they should also be part of this audit plan. You should have a report for its audit. And then, of course, the findings, there should be a proposal on how to correct and prevent future deficiencies. And the last point is also very important. You should ensure that the management cooperates with the QPV to address the findings. Next one. So the corrective and preventive action plan and change management. So this is also described in the Commission implementing regulation. And it is important to highlight that you should correct and prevent any deviations detected. So this can be in the daily operational work, and maybe this is more easier to correct, but and then you also look in any deviations detected in audits, and of course you include also inspection findings. It is important to look for its finding the root cause, of course, because this will help really to correct the deficiency and prevent it in the future. You should give clear timelines for action, and if needed, communicate, of course, to relevant stakeholders. And this could include also NCAs or third parties. You should monitor how effective are the actions and the plan you have made in the CAPA. You should keep this recorded. So the legislation requests the last 5 years. And then, of course, you will implement change management when and as required. And these are all really listed as requirements in the Commission implementing regulation. In the next one. So then I will try to look into the PSMF and the requirements related to this. And this slide lists other important changes with this new regulation. And the PSMF is really, maybe it was expected or anticipated, but it's really a big change that has been introduced together maybe with the continuous signal management, the stopping of PSURs. So here, each marketing authorization holder shall have in place one or more pharmacovigilance system master files that they describe their system. So if you have a system, you have to have one PSMF with a single PSMF reference. But if for any reason you need to have two different or more pharmacovigilance systems, this has to be justified. For example, you may want to do this if you have different types of products. And then you will have to then maintain two different PSMFs with different reference numbers. And each product should not be covered by more than one PSMF. And of course, Calogero explained the PSMF location is what will indicate the member state responsible for the supervision of this PSMF and the system described. Next one. Now, one of the main changes also for the marketing authorization application dossier, the DTPS versus the PSMF. So what happens is we had the detailed description of the pharmacovigilance system, and then we have another description now that we call it PSMF, pharmacovigilance system master file. But there is a big difference because previously the DTPS was part of the dossier, and now we don't want this description as part of the dossier. And the reason we don't want that is that we want this description and this file to be used by you as a tool, to be used not only for the NCAs to understand the system, but for you to really have the oversight, and especially for the QPPV. So, and then that's why it's kept at the site of the market authorization holder, and by the QPV, of course, should have access. What goes in the dossier is instead is the PSMF summary, the summary of the pharmacovigilance system master file. And maybe we see in the next slide a bit more to highlight the differences. So you do have the content of the PSMF summary, and we will go into detail. And this will have to be submitted with its marketing authorization dossier. And if there are changes in the elements in the summary, you will have to submit a variation application, but those would be variations not requiring assessment. And we expect to find it, as I said, in the dossier, but of course, we understand you will also keep it at the MA8 site. Now, the PSMF, it doesn't go in the dossier, and if there are changes to the PSMF, there will not be a need for variations. The PSMF will be important for the NCAs, so it may be requested, and you should be able to submit a copy within 7 days upon request. And as I said, it's not in the dossier, but we will have to have access in the May 8 site. The transition from DTPS to PSMF, there is no need to update the dossier of existing marketing authorizations with a summary of the PSMF. However, it is very clear that you should have a PSMF in place from January 2022 to describe your system. Next one. Now, as I promised, you can see on here, and of course you can go back and read the summary of the pharmacovigilance system master file. The elements we expect to find there is the pharmacovigilance system master file reference number, and I'll go more in detail in the next slide on that. The pharmacovigilance system master file location, that should be the full address of the site where the PSMF is declared, the name, the contact details, and the place of operation of the qualified person responsible for pharmacovigilance. We need a signed statement, and this will be signed by the market authorization holder and the QPV to confirm that the qualified person for pharmacovigilance has the necessary means to fulfill the tasks and responsibilities required by the regulation. And we also need to have the type of record management system used for adverse events reports. And this should include the name of the database if this is, of course, applicable. If you go to the next one, of course, the QPV has a big role in that. They will prepare and maintain the pharmacovigilance system master file, and they are the ones to allocate the PSMF reference number. And we had before discussions on this PSMF reference number. Now there is not going to be any restrictive guidance for the number. What has been decided is that you can select, and this is what the legislation says actually, the QPV should select and allocate the reference number. What you are required is in front of the reference to put the PSMF prefix. So when we see this number, we can identify that this is the PSMF reference number. The other thing that you should be careful, especially if you are keeping more than one system, is that this number, this PSMF reference, is unique for the MAH and for the group of products it relates to. So for the group of products that are covered by this PSMF. And we do expect also that when we have all the PSMF references, that the PSMF reference, the location of the PSMF, and the MAH organization will be unique for each system at EU level. And of course, the QPV will also notify the common authorities and the agency of the place of operation. And this can be the same with the PSMF location or not. And I think this takes us to the next slide, which is the PSMF location, and we discussed a bit this in the morning. So the PSMF location is very important, as we said, also for the planning of inspections. But it should be important also for your organization. So when you decide the location, we would ask that you allocate this either at the site where the main pharmacovigilance activities are carried out, or where the QPPV is operates, because we do want this site to be meaningful for you and also for the authorities, because it will be the primary site to be considered for inspection. Next slide. Here, and I'm sure you have many questions because the PSMF is really something new. Now here we just gave a table very similar to the one you will find in the guidance. And I would say at the moment there is no specific template or other guidance for the PSMF, and we can discuss what we can do to help you to have a good PSMF, a good pharmacovigilance system master file. But here you can see you have the sections in the main part in blue, and then you should have annexes. Now, what I would like to highlight is that the main part should be a description that ideally clear and not changing very often. So it will be the key elements of your system. Somebody reading this should understand how you are organized. Now, in the annexes, we expect that you put more detailed information. It will be usually lists, for example, that need to be more frequently updated, or they can be lengthy. And so you have to understand this difference, because this will help you also to maintain the PSMF. If you go to the next slide. And now maybe we can highlight some key messages for the PSMF and also the availability of the PSMF. As previously said, you should try and create this file to be a useful tool for the marketing authorization holder and the QPV, and to facilitate oversight, because this is the main reason it's kept by the MAH. Of course, it can be stored or made available in an electronic form. You don't need to print a hard copy in the PSMF location, but you have to take into account that copies of full or part of the PSMF may be necessary and may be requested by the competent authorities. So even if it is fully electronic file, it should be printable and searchable. And of course, it should remain readable over time. Next slide. And then some other messages for the maintenance. Of course, it has to be up to date and you should revise it when necessary. I think this is obvious. You could decide to update the PSMF on a periodic basis because otherwise it may be a big burden for you. However, you have to remember that when you have important changes in the system, then you will have to make these changes on an ad hoc basis if, for example, you decide to do other updates periodically. And coming back to the annexes, this more detailed information, you need to see whether you could have some lists or use already existing systems to generate the lists that you will need for the annexes. And this will be acceptable as long as everyone knows where to find them and how to access them. Next slide. Now, this slide I just put here to highlight some points on non-EU information. Of course, all the requirements we are talking about are EU requirements, and there are specific requirements for persons and functions to be located in EA. And the PSMF is an EU requirement. However, you have to remember that pharmacovigilance does not necessarily stop at the EU borders. You may have to include non-EU information in the PSMF. And I give you two, I hope, good examples. If you are a global company with important sites outside the EU for your pharmacovigilance system and the activities carried out that would affect the products marketed in the EU, you may have to include information that are outside the EU. And of course, we have the third country cases. So if you have important sources of safety information and or you have third parties involved, you may have to include some information of these in the PSMF. So keep this in mind. Next slide, please. This is just a quick glance. I'm sure you saw this this slide in other webinars. It's just to show you where the information in the database that concern us will sit. So we will have the QPV, PSMF reference and location. And we did mention previously the pharmacovigilance inspection outcomes. I would like to highlight that this at the moment in the database, they will be for the NCA's use mainly, not mainly, only actually at this stage. So the inspectees, the MAAs and the QPV will receive the full report after an inspection. But these are the outcomes we hope to share in order to improve efficiency and have a risk-based inspection planning. Next slide. So I think I'm coming here to the end of this presentation. You can read, of course, all these elements in the guidance. And the other thing I would like to say is important. We have feedback from you now, but also in the future on the areas where you will need more guidance, more discussion, so we know how to organize future sessions because these are aspects that you can also read in the guidance, but I think it's important to interact and clarify whatever is not clear. And I think that is my last slide. Yes, so I think we can go now to the Q&A session, Josh.
Thank you very much, Sophia. And you've invited people to go into discussion. I think that will not be hard. We have quite a number of questions, and I'm going to start immediately with the first question that was raised early on in your presentation. And I read it from Paola Bergamo, sorry. Please, could you specify what QPPV may also act as regional representative? Does it mean question mark? Please, could you specify what QPPV may also act as regional representative?
Yes, maybe I start, and I would invite also the inspectors to or yourselves to correct or complement the understanding. So there is this requirement that on top of the QPV, EU QPPV, you have a local or regional representative. And it says very clearly that the purpose for this, the primary purpose, is to have someone to communicate in the local language for the purpose of reporting. So this means that if we forget the other activities that you may do locally, you need someone that will facilitate this reporting. So if the QPV speaks many languages, for example, or if the reporting is expected to happen in the same language in more than one member state, you could declare your QPV as the local representative. So the understanding is that the local representative declared for this purpose for this article doesn't have to reside in the member state where they will be declared. They have to be available to facilitate and communicate in the local language, but they can be in another member state. And that is the understanding. So there is some flexibility there. And I think this is irrespective of whether you will have a local affiliate office because there will be activities. So you could declare, I think, this person to be for the member state and not be residing there. That is my understanding. And that is why we are saying the QPPV could also act as local representative in one or more member states. And the other thing is, of course, in the member state where they are located, for sure they can be. You don't have to have a second person if you don't want to.
A related question from Magali. Thank you, Sophia. Magali Guetin, is the nomination of the local regional representative to be communicated officially to the NCA beside the list in the PSMF annex? So the question is, does this person needs to be nominated somehow officially to the NCA?
For sure, they should be named. What I mean is, if they are the person to communicate for the adverse event reporting, they should be reachable, and I would expect you can reach them through a public, contact details. But there is not a specific requirement. I would expect, though, that the member state will know this person. Yes, they have to be communicated. I'm not sure if the inspectors would like to comment on that because this will be at national level, but I would expect each MAH should communicate this.
Anyone from inspectors that are in our panel want to add something to it?
Yes, it depends
Please,
on
Andrea.
yeah. As there's no legal base given within the European legislation, it depends on national legislation. But I can say from our side is now we will have a look into the list when we ask for the PSMF and. Yeah, but there's still no legal base to have a nomination of the local representative. It depends on national law then.
Hello. And I have a good morning from the French.
Good morning.
Good morning from French part. Perhaps it will be a requirement to declare the local representative in France. What is planned, but I can't be sure just now. But I think that is planned to be easier to check and to have a good knowledge of which local representative we have to prepare inspection schedule and.
Thank you very much. for that clarification on that question. Next question is, what should be included in the procedures for dealing with conflict of interest for QPPVs? Is there any further guidance already, Sophia, on what you would expect to see in relation to
Um,
conflict of interest?
No, I don't have the guidance, I'm afraid, but and maybe also the inspectors involved could complement. This was a point that is included in the legislation, and it came. It was a lot discussed whether it is included or not. What this aims is that when we have, for example, a company, usually it can be in smaller companies, but it's not uh, necessary. You have, for example, the CEO of the company being also the QPV. And what we say here is not that we want to avoid this, because it could be a small company and they need to operate like that. What we need to do to achieve, I think, is that first of all, this conflict is identified. So it may not be a problem and it may be acceptable. We are not saying you shouldn't have any, but if you do have, and maybe in those cases you will have, you first need to identify it. And then you need to find a way in the processes that this could create a problem, a real conflict, that somebody else is involved, or you have another process to ensure that the right decisions are made. And of course, the right decisions for the safe use of the medicines. So I think this is what we are aiming. I don't think anyone wanted to block or create more problems, but we need to identify when there could be a conflict. There should be a way around it, and we should be fair. It's like we're saying, look at yourselves. Is it for sure you will always take the right decision? Um, because if the same person is making all decisions, maybe this is not the case. I think this is where this was aiming, and at the end became a requirement. I don't know if somebody would like to compliment. We don't have a procedure at the moment unless somebody else has. But I'm also noting the points where we don't have like a full solution, and maybe we can look into this, providing in the future more guidance.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. I'm moving on. You have mentioned in one of your slides that there needs to be access to a veterinary surgeon, and a question was raised by Sarah Costa. It means it needs to have that speciality, question mark. I'm not sure if I fully understand the question. I think in general, what is meant here, there needs to be, if the QPPV is not a veterinarian, he needs to have access to a veterinarian for all the activities that he is responsible for. Is that right, Sophia?
Uh, Yes, so there is a flexibility. A QPV doesn't have to be a veterinarian. What we want, because they will have to make decisions that they will require probably some veterinary medicines knowledge. If they are not a veterinary surgeon, they should really have available someone. It says on continuous basis. This means because we don't know when they will need this help. So they should be available there to give advice. And I think the interactions can be organized, but there should be, I understand, a proof that if ad hoc there is a need urgently, they can also be reached. But I think people will be
Yeah.
pragmatic with that. I don't know if the inspectors would like
No,
to.
I think it was a kind of confusion that got up with the word surgeon, which was misinterpreted maybe as somebody who is doing surgery, but what I think what we mean is veterinary. I think I'm going to move on because we have so
Jos,
many questions.
Jos, before you move on, there is someone that raised their hand, and I think it's related with this confusion. Can I give her the floor? It's
Yes, I think you already, Stephanie Bull, go ahead. I think you've already said this, right, on the surgery chat. Go ahead.
From messing up with the surgery, not doing surgery in a theater, but just being a vet. I think it may be a confusion language-wise, so that's my
Okay.
impression.
No problem. Thank you. There was still coming back to the previous question. Could you give an example, Sophia, anyone on a potential conflict of interest for a QPPV?
I think I gave an
What could be an
example.
example? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I gave an example, and maybe I will leave also to somebody else. I said, if, for example, the CEO of the company
Okay.
is the QPV as well, and imagine that there is a signal assessed and maybe something in the product information may have to, to submit a variation. That would put maybe the product that is important for safety, but would put the product in a worse place than other ones on the market. They may have a conflict there to go ahead to include the product information or maybe delay. I don't know. That's maybe a very extreme example, but what we mean is we want at least this to be identified. And in this case, I would expect there is a solution, either having somebody else, an expert involved in the assessments, or I think somebody put in the questions in the chat to have more a team rather than only one person. Then they will do a risk-based assessment on the way forward, but it shouldn't be one person that has conflicts. But maybe somebody else will have a better example, because this point was not really from EMA. I'm just explaining how it is understood.
Any regulator in the panel wants to add something? Did I hear Peter there? Or?
Yes, yes. So we would anticipate for the vast majority of companies out there, a QPPV would be someone who is dealing with pharmacovigilance and has a relevant level of independence, can bring a system back into compliance and can influence management to ensure there's enough resources, for example, to bring that system into compliance. Issues of conflict would arise, as Sophia alluded to, perhaps in smaller companies where maybe people may have multiple different roles. And for example, a clear conflict you could come across if you had a commercial director who was bonused on sales of product, then also being a QPPV and having to take action where there's safety issues identified. And you can see a clear conflict there between those two examples. So really, it's ensuring you have a procedure in place to identify any conflict and to act on those. But we would anticipate in the absolute vast majority of companies, they would be big enough to have a separate person who would be the QPPV. They'd be independent from those conflicts and they'd be able to act accordingly. So we would hope in the majority of cases this isn't something that we'd be coming up against, but we were just conscious you could have particularly smaller companies where perhaps people fulfill different roles, and then really you have to identify if there are any conflicts and take actions accordingly to make sure that they don't influence on that QPPV's roles and responsibilities. I hope that's clear. Thank you.
That's very clear. Thank you, Peter. Okay, I'm moving to two questions related to local and regional representatives. So one from Rita Heumann. What are the requirements for the location? Does there need to be a local representative in each member state where a marketing authorization is held? And an additional question was raised in the chat now. Let's say you have multiple distributors in the same country, but the MEH doesn't speak the language. Can you then consider that you have multiple local representatives, for example, those distributors that are actually distributing the medicine? So one is, does there need to be a local representative in each member state, and can you have multiple related to the distributors? Sophia or anyone from the panel, please.
Hello, just maybe I can start. In the legislation, in the specific article, it doesn't say so clearly per member state. So if we read, it says the marketing authorization holders are designate a local or regional representative for the purpose of receiving reports of suspected adverse events, who is able to communicate in the languages of the relevant member states. And already it puts local or regional together. So the understanding is that as long as they are able to communicate in the languages of the member states they are assigned to, they could be assigned and they may not be there. It doesn't say per member state per se. However, we need to understand also what the NCAs would expect. This I would really stop here for this part because we are really going from a completely national situation to this requirement of local regulation. So we will need to see how this will work in each member state, and I think it depends also what its MAH is getting.
Thank you very much. Sophia, you were breaking up a little bit. Maybe just put out your video because it looked like you had, yeah, when you, thank you very much. There was another just came in from Roel van Lieshout on the local representative, so that often you can have actually multiple people receiving in a region the cases. They speak the local language, so there will often not be just one person. So the question is there, who should be nominated then in such a situation where you have multiple people actually? So it's coming back to the question, is one enough? Do you need to nominate multiple people? Maybe Peter or Andrea this time?
I think it's not easy to answer this. It depends on you. The legislation is not so specific with that, and I would say it depends on your entity and how you deal with the pharmacovigilance tasks and which tasks are given to whom. Um, the thing you always have to keep in mind that all adverse events have to come to one point, that all adverse events are processed in the right way, that the quality is good, and that the company might be always reachable for the agencies and for national competent authorities or the agencies. So keep in mind what you have in your company.
Thank you very much. One interesting comment came in also from Jorge Lopez on the question of conflict of interest. Can a participation of ownership of the company be considered? So I assume when you as a QPV have, for example, shares in your company, is that a potential conflict of interest? I think that needs to be reflected on further, but I think it's an interesting comment coming in. Okay, then I'll continue, colleagues, with a question from Martina Reder. The document management system should include a record management system to process safety data, i.e. all information on pharmacovigilance data. Could you please further explain how this is meant? So what is meant with a record management system to process safety data? Peter or Andrea, please, or Carlo.
Yeah, record management system might be a database. It depends on your companies. Might be a database, or even if you have that less or that not a lot of adverse events, might be also an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. But a recording system, recording system for that, and this should be integrated in the document management system. So that means record management system. And I think it's, as you asked already, it's is it for adverse event reporting? Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Question on PSMF. Can there be, is it the possibility of have one PSMF for several MAHs? I don't think it can, but maybe Andrea, Peter, maybe you can confirm. That's not the idea, isn't it? Go ahead, Peter.
No, I'm happy to defer to colleagues there. My understanding is you have to have a PSMF for a PV system, and you could have multiple MAHs under that single system.
Okay.
So as a result, that could then work out that way. But one PSMF per one system is important. But colleagues, please, if I've made a massive misinterpretation, I'm happy to give way.
Yeah. Thank you. That's new to me. I can not see it directly in practice, but perhaps go ahead, Andrea.
Yes, I would support what Peter said. Just
Very good. Okay. Opens
Yes,
up more
same here.
possibilities. Okay. I think it was intention there from Anja Hofler. Where and how do I get the PSMF reference number of my PSMF? I think it was explained later on how to construct the PSMF number. There was another question about how can I be sure that this is unique? I don't know who wants to take that question.
Yes.
Carlo?
I can take. So yeah, yes. The important thing is that the PSMF is unique for you, for the marketing authorization holder, and for the products. So it means you can have more pharmacovigilance system master file PSMF number, but this should be different from the different for the different pharmacovigilance system. So, but should be unique for you. That's the meaning.
Yes, Josh, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better, like before. Go ahead.
Yes, so if I can compliment, is exactly what Carlos said. So you should not worry whether somebody else will use the same reference number. You put the PSMF at the beginning, and then your own reference. This, as I said, I saw a question. It will not be generated from ultravigilance, the pharmacovigilance system. You will have to decide and put the prefix PSMF and then your reference. And as Calogero said, you have to ensure is unique for you. Now, the combination of this number with the PSMF location and the MAH organization will be unique at EU level, even if you, with two MAAs, select to put, for example, PSMF 2021-01, because we have the combination that is unique at EU level. And these elements, they will all go and connect together in the databases. So you shouldn't worry so much whether the PSMF reference you allocate is unique at EU level. You should really ensure it's unique for your own organization, especially in the case you have more systems in place, like Calogero explained.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Moving on, question Marta Olikowska. You have mentioned that MAH needs to have a quality management system to perform pharmacovigilance activities. Quality management is widely described in GDP and concerns distribution. Is this the same system? Are there two different separate systems as they concern a bit different subjects? Question mark. So is it connected to the GDP? Go ahead. Andrea, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It might be the same system. So normally you have one quality management system in your company, and the pharmacovigilance should be part of the system. But before we hadn't had this obligation in we hadn't had a real legal basis for this. It was only mentioned in volume 9b before. But now with this new legislation, we have it in the implementing act covered that you have to have a quality management system for pharmacovigilance as well. And normally, if you have a quality management system in your company, the pharmacovigilance part is integrated in this system. I would expect it like that. If you didn't have any quality management system, so it might be a system on its own. But normally, if you're a company with production and so on, you have to have a quality management system, as you said already, for GMP, GDB, GXP, I would say.
Thank you very much. Very clear, Andrea. Question from Daniela Golinelli. Regarding products authorized with the DDPS, is it necessary to submit a variation to insert the PSMF summary? That's definitely one that will go for the Q&A as well. Sophia, please. So, yeah, go. You understood the question? You want me to repeat?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
So, for existing products, we did mention this in the presentation. There is no requirement that you include the summary of the PSMF in the dossier. So you don't have to do this. However, we do need the information on the PSMF reference and location for the system to work, because there is an obligation for everyone to have the PSMF in place. So what is discussed and proposed is that because this information is new, that you submit this using the variations not requiring assessment. And I understand that this functionality may not be available immediately. So I think you will have to wait for instructions for this when this will happen, because it could be in sometime in the first part of the year. But irrespective of reporting the PSMF location and PSMF reference, you should still have in place a PSMF. So the two are a bit different. So you have an existing product, you don't have to do anything for the dossier. You have to have a PSMF and then give the details of the reference you allocated and the location where you declare this PSMF to the authorities. And for this second part, it's true, you may not have all the information how you do it now, but the proposal is that you do through the variations, not requiring assessment, because then we will have this information in the database, and this is what we need to continue then working with the new regulation, planning of inspection, and also for the authorities to know where everything is. I don't know, Joseph, you would like to complement or any other
No, I think
colleague?
you've given the answer as far as it gets for the moment. You've said that we were still waiting also for some information on how to submit it. And it also, I think it answers a question that we have in the chat from S. Günther on the same topic. So thank you, Sophia. I think it's good for the moment. Another one, if from Angela, if the QPPV is not a veterinary surgeon, does the name of the assistant veterinary surgeon need to be included in the PSMF summary? What needs to be in this PSMF summary? If also information about the veterinary?
I think no, there is no, I mean, sorry, Andrea.
Yeah, yeah, as you said, no.
No. Okay. Quite clear. Very good. Thank you. Magali Quetin again, PSMF reference number. How do we know that is unique? I think we've covered that one. I'm going to question from Orion Mortimer. Will the NCA register the PSMF location site and QPPV details in the UPD? Will the NCA register the PSMF location site and QPPV details in the UPD? I don't know if
I
Pedro was
can
there
take,
or
or
yes.
maybe Andrea, you clarify this because it's to you.
Yes, you can also, but for the PSMF number and the PSMF location, it's the marketing authorization holder, preferably, and this should be via this variation without not requiring assessment. And for the QPPV and the QPPV location, as I know, as we do it in Germany, it's from the NCAs now, which will bring it into the database. We will do it via our database into the UPD. So I think this is expected.
Yes, indeed, QPV details. Another more detailed question, Sonia Schwab. Does the PSMF reference number in the summary also includes the version of the PSMF?
No, I can reply
No.
this.
Go ahead.
Yes, no, it's not needed to include the version because the version could change often. So that's why we didn't put any reference to the version.
And I think there are similar questions. So the PSMF number and the PSMF number in the summary is the same, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Another related question. The summary as such is not part of the PSMF. I guess, do you need to see in the PSMF, the summary of the PSMF? It's a bit of a...
No, it's a summary. So Sophia, go ahead.
No, not as such, but what I put in the slide is that we would expect you also hold it because if some is a document you are submitting with the dossiers, but it's not listed as such because all the elements will be in the PSMF recorded anyway. So on the other way around, someone could choose to file the summary to give some information on the master file, but no, it's not part because you have more details in the PSMF.
Okay, thank you very much. Question from Stephanie Fleischecker. Currently, many MEHs have given distribution rights to other companies, and for that, pharmacovigilance agreements exist. Such a distribution situation is not covered by the NVR anymore, and based on our current understanding, current distributors might need to act as a wholesaler in the future. Thus, such new wholesale agreements without detailed pharmacovigilance agreements should be included in the Annex 5 of the PSMF as well. So it relates to a change in legislation that I'm not myself not really familiar with, of distributors into wholesalers. Who has the answer for this?
May I take this one? Because I think it was a special German thing that we had distributors which brought into the market products with their names. So, and therefore we always inspected also our distributors. As this doesn't exist any longer, and it's this special German thing is a bit different. It will be decided how it was dealt with distributors. I can't tell anything about that, but for wholesalers, it's clear that wholesalers do not have pharmacovigilance tasks, as I know by legal base. And so I would say no, because in the annex of the PSMF, you have to list all contracts with, it's in Annex 5, further information on contractual arrangements between marketing authorization holders and third parties concerning pharmacovigilance activities. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much,
One
Andre.
aspect I would like
Go
to
ahead,
add to
Peter.
that,
Yeah.
perhaps, is it will depend on the complexities of the supply chain in the countries you're marketing in. But the only aspect I would, the way I would look at this is how likely is my wholesaler to receive safety information, and as a result, should we have an agreement with them to get that into our system? And in particular situations where, for example, if you do not have an office or representative in that particular country, and the wholesaler is likely to be the only point of contact with your veterinary surgeons or with the pharmacies you supply, then you need to consider how likely is it that safety information is going to come to that wholesaler, and are they actually then performing PV activities on our behalf? So should we have an agreement in place with them specifying the gathering of adverse events, and should that then ultimately be listed in the PSMF? So that's the way I would look at this really. For the vast majority of cases, perhaps it would not be likely you would get safety information from those routes, as Andrea alluded to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that further clarification. Another question from Rahul van Lieshout. Can you please explain what is expected to be provided in Annex 5.2 and Annex 2.4 of the PSMF? The difference between these two is not completely clear.
Yeah,
Right, go
I
ahead.
can start. I think, Joss, if you can hear me well.
Yeah, very well.
You are right, but we have to in order to understand this, and I would like also, please correct me if I'm wrong, the other colleagues attending. It is true, it seems to be almost the same, but we have to think what Annex 2 is requesting to include. So it's really complementing the information of the QPV. So I think in this Annex 2 4, it shouldn't really mean only third parties. I think it means third parties, but also other pharmacovigilance activities of the QPV that are delegated, because this part is really to show anything related to the qualified person, how they work, how they organize backups, assistance, and any other delegation. So it is true, maybe it's not so well written because it wouldn't be only third parties. In my understanding, Annex 2 and is really related to the QPPV, their obligations, and how they delegate the tasks. So it's really with the, to clarify who is doing what in the team. Now, Annex 5 is more related to contractual arrangements and third parties. So there may be some repetition. This I agree, and is very well spotted. But I think this is the part also you really need to list all the third parties taking responsibilities. And of course, if they are taking tasks of the QPV, this is very important for someone to know, either in the company or an inspector. I'm not sure if I helped you in that. It's very well spotted. It can be confusing because it seems to be referring only to third parties, but thinking about the purpose of each section and the annexes, I would say that in the first one, you would have to highlight if an important task of the QPV in a big organization is given to another to another team or individual. But maybe people can complement the understanding.
Yes, just to complement what Sofia said, is Carlos. Just yes, totally agree. It could be it's well spotted indeed, but this what we meant that should be could be the same task because could be delegated to the if the task are outsourced. But in case the task has been delegated inside the company, we mean third parties and not outsources outside. So this is the difference for sure. The Annex 2 should be listed all the tasks that have been delegated by the QPV to any party, here inside, either inside or outside. And the Annex 5 should be the task being delegated outside.
Thank you very much. I think it's sufficient clarification, but good for spotting rule. Chioti question for SMEs who do not have a constant access to assistant veterinarian, can they include accessing of consulting veterinarians services in annex? Sure. in annex. So if I understand the question well, my understanding is you do need to have some kind of constant access actually to a veterinarian, but here it is stated for SMEs that would not have such access. Is it sufficient to have it in some kind of annex? No, Sophia or Andrea? Is it Andrea?
Yes, that means if you have, I think for SMEs, the question is if they have really vets in their companies,
Okay.
and if they don't have, then they can outsource this to external vets as well. That they have to have contracts then with them, but they should have permanent access to this vet.
And I would like to add one aspect to that. Where you are dedicating that service out, you should ensure that that veterinary surgeon is capable of giving you the advice that you need. So they may, for example, need to have some understanding of PV requirements, understand how they can contribute to the extra expertise that you need there. But agree with everything else Andrea said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea and Peter, for clarifying this. Question from Vasilini Vasilova. The database in the summary of PSMF, in brackets point E, is this the database where the MEH performs signal management? So the database in the summary of PSMF, is this the database where the market authorization holder performs signal management?
I can take this one. I mean, the
Please, Peter.
database is it's the if used, it's the database you use for the collation of your adverse events. So perhaps the likes of PV Works or any other database that you may use there. That's what's intended in the summary.
Thank you, Peter.
Um,
Andrea?
Yeah, just in addition to that, in the summary in Article 23 of the implementing regulation, it says the type of record management system and for adverse events reporting, including the name of the database, if applicable. If it is a real database, then the name of the database. But sometimes if it's a small company with perhaps only one product with so less adverse event reports, it might be only another system, like, as I said already, a Excel spreadsheet or something like that. But this means this should be named in the summary of the PSMF.
Thank you, Andrea. Clarifying this. Another question came in on the figure of the deputy QPV. It doesn't seem to be foreseen. Who should notify adverse events in case of QPV absence? Once deputies had to be registered for access in Vigilance and they had their own password. No, that's in fact true. Yes, we are often notified about a QPV going on holiday or for any other reasons as being deputized. So it's a question on, it doesn't seem to be quite clear yet for the moment, the figure of the deputy.
Jos, may I take this?
Sophia.
It may not be mentioned as deputy, but there is clear requirement on backup. So it's like before, you should have a backup arrangement. So if this arrangement is the deputy and not a team, for example, or another arrangement, I don't know, usually it is a deputy. So it hasn't really changed. The requirement of backup has behind the deputy. And you will have to ensure that the deputy can act, if you have a deputy as backup procedure, that can do what the QPVV would do when he is absent. So they may also need, as before, to be registered, trained, and also be accessible through the contact details that you have provided. I don't see much difference to the past here, unless somebody can give another backup procedure. So there is some flexibility, but there is a requirement for backup.
Declan has its hand up. Declan, on this topic, maybe go ahead.
Yeah, it was just to go back to the last question, a bit of clarification on the database, Joss. I assumed an SME would be using Vigilance, so therefore that's what we would put in there. I just wanted clarification on that.
That's also my assumption, yes. I think it is allowed by the implementing act as well for the SME to use the database Vigilance. So Peter and Andrea, can this be clarified that so the summary can relate directly back to Vigilance?
Yes, sure. As I said, now it is mentioned in the summary in Article 23, the type of record management system used for adverse events. So if it's said the reports are dealt with EVVET 3 or with the EMA thing, then yeah, that should be mentioned here. And if there's a change, if a company decides to use an own system and implement the system, then this is a change in the system, which might have aspects to the risk-based, to the risks of adverse event reporting. That was the reason why it is put in the summary of the PSMF, because then this should be highlighted with a variation not requiring assessment.
And just from my side, exactly as Andrea said, so the type of record management system used, if that's Vigilance, please state that. If you are using anything else supplementary to that, for example, you may have an Excel sheet that you're using, you could perhaps make reference to that as well in the summary. And if that changes, then that needs to be updated accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for clarifying this. I'm going to a question from Francesca Holland. Does list of local reps in annex need to include local reps who are employees of a third-party distributor? Noting that the pharmacovigilance agreement between the MEH and the third-party distributor would include the obligation for the distributor to have a local rep who speaks already the local language. So do we expect to see in the annex the actual employees list of a third-party distributor in the PSMF? Peter, go ahead.
From my perspective, if they are being used as a local representative, if you are using someone in a distributor for that role, that's what they're contracted to do, and as a result, they should be included in the relevant annex of the PSMF.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I'm scrolling now to the last questions that have just come in, which I don't necessarily had on my list. Okay, we still have some time for some more questions. From Delphine Chaudier, Annex 4 of the PSMF should include a list of all scheduled and completed audits, including outstanding critical and major findings. For the first PSMF, in terms of list of audits, what is expected? Audits scheduled and completed since when? E.g., the last EMA inspection. So this is related to what is expected for the first PSMF of legacy data, legacy information of audit. Or Sophia, this be
Yes,
discussed?
maybe I start. No,
Mhm.
actually, this specific question has not been discussed within the EU network inspectors, and maybe that's why colleagues don't, I mean, they can say what they think, but we have not really discussed this specific one, and that's good we get this. There are specific requirements. So I would say you try to go back because it's meaningful to, as I said, this is a tool. So the suggestion, for example, from the last inspection, that would also be relevant. If you have already records and you keep them in the last 5 years, you can also include. Now, if you were not keeping the records or you don't have the full time, I think this can be justified and start from now. But I would say in an existing system, we would expect to find some history. Because it makes sense. But it may not go as back as, as prospectively, the planning. We have to be practical. But maybe we can discuss this within inspectors to have like a common line on what is expected or what, and maybe share this. I don't know if nationally this has been discussed by the inspectors that attend this session, but we have not discussed to have a common, timing, how much you go back. So I would first propose that you really include any records you would have, because it's helpful for the system for continuity.
I would add to that from a national perspective, we need to discuss this at European level to have a common understanding of how far back MAHs should go. But in the absence of that, particularly as an increased focus is on conducting audits under the new legislation, whatever information MAH can provide to show that they have a sufficient, well organized system in place that provides them with oversights of the entire aspects of their pharmacovigilance system, they should show it, because really it is positive and it helps give inspectors further information about how well organized that system could be and how well organized the oversight is. So really, I don't think you'd be penalized for going back too far. But I think it's important that if you do have those records there, particularly from perhaps new veterinary regulation times, if you have evidence of audits being conducted, lists of those, do include them in the PSMF. It would be a positive thing. But with regards to exact timings, I think that needs to be discussed further. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to I think we've covered actually most of the questions, and they're becoming very specific. So we won't forget any of the questions, and we will be reflecting further outside and see if they can be included in the Q&A following the webinar. So one last one maybe relates to punctual sales. A question from Carmen: punctual sales due to epidemiological reasons as cascade use, in which there is no distribution agreement or pharmacovigilance agreement exists. What would happen? So yes, I know that, for example, certain batches are sold or bought by big veterinary practices in certain member states under the cascade use. Are there do these arrangement needs to be specified somewhere in the PSMF, or I don't know, in terms of follow-up? Probably it's so specific that it wasn't discussed yet, right, Sophia? Is cascade use related situations where you not necessarily have a local representative attached?
Yeah, I have to say it has not been
Yeah.
discussed. Maybe we can take it to the inspectors working group and try to give some response to this. Because as we said, the questions will not be lost, but I think this maybe we shouldn't respond before discussing with everyone.
Yeah, very good. Colleagues, I'm gonna conclude this session, this webinar that we had today. Thank you very much, Carlo and Sophia, for presenting and preparing the presentations. Thank you all for good questions and discussions and input, also the replies and the clarifications received from Peter and Andrea. We're gonna include a survey, will be included somewhere, I think, that will be available for you to give feedback on the actual webinar itself. And then I think this is going to be, in terms of pharmacovigilance, the last one for this year. We will be back soon in January You know, at the same time, we are really working hard on certain systems that have to be becoming available very soon, that are critical to signal management and to reporting the signals and so. So that will be the next part. We're coming back to those with additional webinars in the new year. So I'm wishing you all a good day and good lunch. Bon appetit. Thank you very much.